All right, guys, so happy Thanksgiving, and I hope that each and every last one of you take time to spend time with your friends and your family. I'm most certainly going to be doing that, and you should be doing that as well, too. But we got to talk about this story out of Louisville that does not fit the narrative. You're not going to hear about this much in the mainstream level media. You're not going to hear about it on CNN, MSNBC. If they do talk about it, they'll write an article about it, and they won't talk about the main things that they should be talking about. They're going to talk about things like gun control. They're going to push the Democrat agenda. When, in this case right here, you could make an argument that the radical Democrat agenda is why the situation happened in the first place, because this mass shooter that we got to talk about here today, the Louisville mass shooter, this happened a few months ago, back in April. Okay, you didn't really hear too much about it, even though this guy was a white male, right? And typically when it's a white male, you never hear the end of it. But now we're finally figuring out why the media has swept this story under the rug, and they don't want to talk about it because it doesn't fit the narrative. Okay, this guy, according to his manifesto, was a radicalized liberal who targeted upper class white people because he wanted to highlight the fact that it was easy to get a gun, right? He wanted stricter gun laws. So essentially he sacrificed himself, targeted upper class white people in order to push a radical, progressive, liberal Democrat agenda. Take a look.
Louisville Metro Police closed their investigation into the mass shooting at Old National Bank in April and released the details we have been waiting to see. Hello, everybody. It's our top story. I'm Doug Proffitt. We have the motive stated by the gunman himself, but first, new tonight, the families are out with a statement about Connor Sturgeon's actions that day. They're saying on behalf of survivors and families, attorneys say in part, the release of the police report on the Old National Bank mass shooting is an important step for those personally impacted by the tragedy as well as for the community. The statement goes on to say, our hearts are with our clients this week as they process this painful report, while many of them have an empty seat at their Thanksgiving table, or they reflect on the deep trauma they have experienced this year. End quote. Now we want to get to the evidence for you in that file and the motive given by the shooter himself. WHS 11 Night Team's Taylor Woods is here. And Taylor, police discovered that he had a plan, but that it came together in just a matter of days, not weeks.
Doug, investigators say Connor Sturgeon, he actually planned and executed the shooting within 1 week. This 64-page report includes writings that show how he planned the shooting and why. One family friend of a victim tells me there needs to be a mental health assessment before people buy rifles. Body camera video shows Louisville Metro Police officers Nicholas Wilt and Corey Galloway arriving to Old National Bank April 10th. Tuesday afternoon, LMPD released a 64-page report detailing personal notes and letters that 25-year-old bank employee Connor Sturgeon wrote to family and friends days before the shooting. The evidence file includes this selfie taken by Sturgeon 5 days before the shooting, portraying the Joker face that's popular on social media. Sturgeon described how easy it was for him to buy an AR-15, 4 magazines, and 120 rounds of ammunition for $700. That receipt from River City Firearms is seen here.
I mean, not only his note, it's proven every day through the mass shootings that happen across the country that how easy it is to buy an assault weapon.
Police say he fired a total of 40 rounds that day. Sturgeon called himself a psycho, telling his parents to fight lawmakers on lax gun laws, asking for them to stop the sale of weapons of mass destruction.
Please do something.
Dr. Muhammad Babar has been pleading for an end to gun violence. He's also a friend of the Elliott family. Bank Vice President Tommy Elliott killed in the shooting. He feels there should be a mental health assessment before people buy guns.
How long the waiting period should be. There should be some background checks, mental health checkup.
Detectives retrieved Connor Sturgeon's Instagram stories just hours before the shooting on April 10th. Sturgeon even wrote, quote, "These people did not deserve to die, but because I was depressed and able to buy a gun, they're gone." Still, Bobber says there needs to be immediate action to end gun violence, and a mental health checkup could show if someone is mentally healthy for a weapon.
to see that if there is somebody who is on the edge to break down and do something which will not only harm everybody else around them, but it will also harm them and hurt their loved ones too.
Sturgeon's family took him to emergency therapy days before the shooting. He was on various mental health medications. Sturgeon wrote in large caps, "I am sorry, I can't take it anymore." In the end, Sturgeon said he had two goals: kill himself and stop gun violence, and send a message to politicians. And a group of survivors and victims' families are planning to sue the gun manufacturer, Radical Firearms of Texas. They say the goal is to prevent weapons like the one used in this shooting from being in the hands of people mentally unable to handle them. In a statement tonight, attorneys say they're reviewing this report as they move forward with preparing to file that lawsuit.
Taylor, thank you very much. Now,
yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. Okay, again, doesn't fit the narrative. This is why you guys are not going to hear about this story. It's going to be swept under the rug because this guy literally committed a mass shooting for the sake of pushing a liberal agenda. Okay, this guy was a radicalized liberal who really believes that an AR-15 is a weapon of mass destruction. Okay, which is the same type of talking points that people like Joe Biden use all the time. Same type of talking points that we see on networks like MSNBC, CNN. This guy was radicalized on MSNBC, CNN, and the mainstream liberal media. And basically, that same ideology is why he went out and committed his mass shooting. Okay? And he also, again, targeted people based off their race. He targeted whites. Now, again, it goes without saying, it's an easy thing to say for me every single time. Now, what do you think the mainstream liberal media would be saying if the roles were reversed? Okay, if you had a white shooter that targeted black people and openly said, yes, I'm targeting them because they're black. Actually, we know. Look at the Buffalo mass shooting, right? We know. We saw all the outrage there, okay? That story was covered for days. But for whatever reason, this story, again, was just kind of swept under the rug. I'm like, well, why are they not talking about this one? Right? Well, the reason why you didn't hear too much about this one, you might have heard some stuff about it. The reason why you didn't hear too much about it is because, again, it doesn't fit the narrative. And they probably knew that from the beginning. They knew it from the beginning. Okay? So now they wait until, nobody cares anymore. Thanksgiving, nobody's paying attention to news, right? Nobody's paying attention to what's going on. Oh, let's reveal to the public that this guy did it because he's a radicalized leftist. He was radicalized by Democrat Party talking points. Again, it's amazing how that works. But again, I've been making this argument for years now that you have a group of individuals in this country who have been radicalized by the left, okay? A vast majority of the political violence that you see in this country, because this act right here was an act of political violence, he did it for political reasons, okay, comes from the left. But again, you're not going to see the media frame this as, oh, well, this is another act of left-wing violence. But again, this guy even said anything close to what they could deem to be conservative, or they could say that, oh, well, he's right-wing. They be screaming all day about, oh, well, this is just another example of right-wing violence. When, again, I'm not seeing too much overtly political right-wing violence in this country. I'm just not seeing it. I'm not seeing it. But what I am seeing a lot of is a lot of overt political violence that comes from the left, where these people are straight up liberal. They're like, we're liberal and we're committing this act because we're liberal, because we want liberal policies. We have a liberal agenda, and this is why we're committing this act of violence. I'm seeing a whole lot of that. Okay? And again, this is just another example. So, again, it's just crazy how the media covers certain stories based off race, based off whether or not the racial narrative fits. Here in this case right here, you have white people who were targeted for their race. This guy's clearly a liberal, pushing a liberal agenda. He was upset that Democrats weren't doing enough about, gun restrictions or whatever. So he decided to commit a mass shooting. And it's crickets. Crickets about whether or not MSNBC and CNN is radicalizing individuals to commit these acts of violence, even though we see individuals committing acts of violence in the name of left-wing politics on a very frequent basis in this country. Way too frequent. And again, the sad part is that instead of talking about that, okay, instead of discussing the radicalization of individuals from, Democratic rhetoric. Oh, now all of a sudden they want to talk about mental health, right? Oh, they want to talk about mental health. Okay, so when they deemed the shooter to be right-wing, okay, they say, oh, he's right-wing. You can't talk about mental health. Only thing you can talk about is how Republicans are radicalizing people and gun control, right? But when the guy's a left-winger, now they want to have the mental health conversation. Oh, well, you don't understand. Because he was a left-winger, he had mental problems, right? Like, that's what they do. You know what I'm saying? Again, it's just so crazy how they shift things based off whatever the narrative is, right? And they'll twist it to fit the agenda instead of just acknowledging what it is, which is what they would do in any other situation, right? If it did fit the narrative they want, which is say, well, this is an act of political violence and this person was radicalized by the rhetoric of, such and such and such political party, right? AKA Republicans. That's what they would say. But when they're radicalized by Democrats, oh, now let's have the mental health conversation. We need to ban guns, right? Again, it's just amazing how that works. And, there's no need to sue the gun manufacturer. It's not the gun manufacturer's fault. I understand that, look, the families are grieving and they're sorry for their loss. And, I'm sorry for their loss as well, too. It sucks. It's terrible, right? But it's not the gun manufacturer's fault that this guy was radicalized by Democrats and the mainstream liberal media. It's not their fault. So why are you going after them? You need to be going after the people that are radicalizing folks in this country when it comes to this issue. Because a vast majority of gun owners are law-abiding citizens who don't deserve to have their rights taken away because one person decides to commit an act of violence to prove a political point. So, again, thoughts and prayers with the victims and the families of this incident, of this tragedy. It's Thanksgiving, and I know it sucks that you're missing a family member at, the dinner table, and to receive this news right, before Thanksgiving, again, must be heartbreaking. So, again, let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.